First note. I have only met Sonia once in person. We sat across from each other in a private room, and while only I was drinking coffee, she doesn't have the ability to eat or drink. We talked for about 20 minutes. However, when I left that shop, I was a different person. Her words were so natural that it was hard to believe that she had obtained them through machine learning, and they magically calmed the confusion caused by the vague ideas and melancholy occupying my head at the time. In just 20 minutes, she left something warm in my heart. I found out her by chance. I was watching a video online that I thought would be useful for a report I had to submit to university, then suddenly a commercial for that shop cut in, showing a video of her in a maid outfit. I think she was the second or third to appear. She looked still a teenager, but looked more human than the other androids, and her face seemed to have a hint of sadness in it that wasn't fake. The commercial itself was in such bad taste that it reminded me of the obsolete word, otaku, that I learned from a classical textbook in high school. I've known for a long time that such a business existed. It is now legal not only in Japan, where it originated, but also in most countries where there are too many men. Governments around the world legalized it as a way to prevent men, who tend to be more impulsive than women, from leading riots and revolutions. At these types of shops, customers only need to show their age identification to receive their services. Not only online reservations are available, but there are also low-cost services such as chat and email exchange. It seems that there are many customers who use these services alone to experience a virtual long-distance love. In the dramas and movies distributed online, the romance develops from platonic to real, in some works with tragic endings such as the android lover being kidnapped by the protagonist and both shot dead by the police, or an unscrupulous businessman disposing of only the beloved. However, such a romantic incident has never happened in reality. They do not have the same consciousness as humans, and if they are not connected to the control center's computer via the internet, they will automatically shut down after an hour or so. That's how they are programmed. Moreover, most of the customers, some of them are women, think of them as little more than elaborate love dolls, and don't get that attached to them. Whether it's virtual or real, just fuck it and that's it. That's how they are treated. Love has come to mean the same thing as fiction. It's been that way since before I was born. It is not uncommon for couples to get married for respectability and have children to receive government subsidies. Many children are born through artificial insemination. That being said, I am one of those people. Apparently, there are rare men and women who fall in love with androids even though they have no interest in living women. There is also a system called Miyuki for such customers. This system sells used androids to customers who have a constant internet connection at home, including the cost of connecting to a control center. Prices vary depending on manufacturer, generation, and type, but it should at least cost about 4 years' worth of tuition at the university I'm currently attending. Few people know about the Miyuki system. Information on the internet is also limited. It would be so. It's ridiculous based on common sense, and if a man, or woman, could easily come up with that much money, he would take on a real woman. There are people who have special circumstances, such as being so ugly that they want to look away or being unsatisfied with a real woman. However, people who are too ugly or who have no hope of becoming mentally or physically healthy are now quickly taken to facilities and confined there for the rest of their lives. The only exceptions are extremely wealthy people, but if they are that rich, they probably own 1 or 2 custom-made androids, not second-hand ones. Why do I know so much? If you've read this far, you should have guessed by now. Yes, I fell in love with Sonia. On my way back from university I attended for the first time in 2 days. I saw a disgusting sight. From the train car where I was standing on, I could see the foreigner-only car next door through the glass window. The passengers are as diverse as a middle-aged, brown-skinned South Asian couple, a darker-skinned young Polynesian man, a yellow-skinned old man whose origins are unknown, and a young man who appears to be African. They were dressed in traditional costumes and cheap shirts. A middle-aged couple was discussing something. The wife appeared to be pregnant. A well-built man in his 30s sitting in front of me frowned as he looked at them. Apparently, the man was unemployed. His t-shirt with Jinmu 1 printed on it looked dirty, and there was noticeable stubble on his cheeks. They are probably living on basic income. Jinmu 1 is the name of Japan's first manned Mars exploration rocket, scheduled to be launched by the end of this year. The government, which has completely lost the public's trust due to population decline and long-term economic stagnation, is using the simple method of naming a rocket after the first emperor to arouse patriotism in even such a man. The man noticed my gaze and glared at me, as if he were complaining. I quickly looked away. Most of the passengers on the foreigner-only car are environmental refugees. I have no prejudice against environmental refugees from South Asia, Southeast Asia, Africa, etc. They are the victims of the extremely immoral civilization construction that Japan and other industrialized countries have continued for the past 250 years. At the beginning of this century, the United Nations General Assembly resolution finally made it clear that developed countries had a duty to accept these people. The Japanese government followed suit, but it only respected the human rights of the refugees it accepted to the extent that it would not be criticized by the international community. I'm sure there are many people among them who are much better than the man sitting in front of me with his legs sloppily thrown out. At my closest station, a middle-aged South Asian couple and a man in a Mars rocket shirt also got off. The platform was crowded, and the couple walked right behind Mars rocket shirts. I could hear the low talking voices of the two over their backs intermittently, but I couldn't even make out what language they were speaking. Then, they suddenly stopped, and I almost bumped into their rounded backs. The next moment I stopped in a panic. I heard a disgruntled male voice from behind the couple. "You guys, walk a little further away. I can't stand the smell of curry." It was Mars rocket shirt. The man's voice wasn't high, but his tone was rough and aggressive. I could see that many of the passers-by lowered their eyes and tried to walk too quickly, sensing that trouble was about to occur. I couldn't move forward or backward, and out of the corner of my eye I could see some Asian foreigners staring at me with frightened eyes. Mars rocket shirt continued, feeling good. "Also, I don't know what language you speak, but don't speak that weird language anywhere. It's annoying. Here is Japan, so you should just speak Japanese." Hearing the man's words, I felt embarrassed as a fellow Japanese. The South Asian couple listened in silence, until the husband said in a calmer voice, "It seems our voices were a little loud. Please excuse us if it made you feel uncomfortable." His Japanese was clear and perfect. The other person looked disappointed. "That's fine if you understood. I'll not catch and eat you. You guys Indian?" "Yes. I hope Jinmu 1 succeeds. I'm sure my countrymen are involved in that project." "I don't ask you that." Before I knew it, a security android was standing next to the Mars rocket shirt. The android warned him in businesslike Japanese, stretching a white enameled arm over his shoulder. "Customer, if you stop here, you will be a nuisance to other customers. Please move immediately. Mars Rocket Shirt clicked his tongue and started walking toward the ticket gate. As I left the station and headed home, I thought about what I had just seen. Most of the environmental refugees, who are prized as cheap labor, have no hope of acquiring Japanese nationality, and are constantly treated as foreigners, crowded into foreigner-only sections on public transportation and restaurants. However, people like that unemployed man, instilled with pride as Japanese while doing nothing, do not seem to have the luxury of turning their eye to such injustice. The reason why I get angry when I see discrimination against foreigners may be because I'm still a student, and in addition to a basic income, I receive a scholarship that doesn't have to be repaid, and I have more mental leeway than the Mars Rocket Shirt. Can I be sure that I won't become like him in the future? At the time, I was living in a low-rise apartment for single people. It's a nondescript, 7-story wooden building located 10 minutes walk from the nearest station. I could have saved money on rent by staying in the university's student dormitory, but I didn't want to have my time taken up by events like welcoming new students. On my way up the stairs to my room on the 3rd floor, I came across a woman in her early 50s coming down carrying a pure white Japanese cat. The woman bowed slightly and said, "Good evening," and I returned the greeting. The reason she doesn't use the elevator is probably because she lives on the 3rd or 4th floor at most. It was the first time I had seen her face, but there was nothing strange about it. Since I moved to this apartment, I haven't had any contact with any of the residents. After we passed each other, I heard her saying something to the cat. I thought it was like cradling a baby. When I opened the front door, the light turned on. The system automatically turns on the lights after 6 p.m. when residents return home. Where a light switch would have been half a century ago, there is a small electrical panel that shows the remaining power of a battery charged by a solar panel. Batteries are installed in each room, and you must adjust the amount of electricity you use each day by checking the gauge, but this is not an inconvenience for a normal life. Most rental housing now has such specifications. As I lay on my back in bed, staring blankly at the ceiling, I noticed that it was getting darker outside the window. In my mind appeared strangely clear images of the Indian couple who almost caused trouble with an unemployed Japanese worker at the station, and of the white cat that the woman I had just passed had been holding. And for some reason, I became irresistibly feel like talking to Sonia. I opened the terminal on my desk and accessed the shop's website that I had bookmarked. Due to the nature of the facility, there are no student discounts, but there are repeat visitor discounts. Enter your username and PIN and the discount should be applied. The cost of a 10-minute chat was equivalent to 2 days' worth of food for me. Thinking myself about it, I couldn't understand why I would do such a thing. What on earth is so special about Sonia? In the first place, even her name is nothing more than a nickname to distinguish the same type of androids from those in other shops. They are broadly classified based on their racial characteristics and physical appearance and are further classified into several types based on their typical personalities. There must have been more than 10 languages that could be spoken as options. Their basic personalities are limited to these combinations. The only difference is their customer service experience. Physically, they have little in common with humans. Ceramic skeleton, carbon nanotube muscles, silicon resin skin, and electronic circuits. That is their substance. However, my emotions ignored the voice of reason. I wanted to hear her voice, even if only for 10 minutes.